Hello! On behalf of ArCADiasoft, I want to welcome you to this presentation, which is the last of the INTERsoft-INTELLICAD 2022 and 23 series. Today, we will discuss the more advanced options, not only for screen personalization, but also information about system variables, how to save your own settings and restore them later, of course, as well as how to create local layouts. And we will summarize the whole series of our presentations. So that I encourage you to watch all those that you haven't seen yet. If any of you haven't watched any of the previous presentations, you can find them all on YouTube. We'll start with the personalization of the interface, which is what we see here. Because you can customize the program according to your own habits. For example, from another CAD program you've been working on. Or just customize the layout for yourself, so that you have as many functions as possible in the place where you will be intuitively placed for you, and not as the program has determined. Most of the things we're going to customize here today are on the Customize UI window. And we can get it regardless of our configuration, whether we have ribbons or whether we have toolbars. If we click somewhere beyond our toolbar icons on the ribbon, or here, past the File tabs with the right mouse button, from the menu we can access the various options, including Switch to Menu Bar, so that we don't have those ribbons at the top of the screen. If someone has a small resolution or prefers to work on toolbars, we can disable these toolbars for ourselves, and we can also minimize them. This is also an available option, of course, but then you have to click each time you make those options to show up. So here we can, amongst other things, switch to the classic view and enable those toolbars that we need. Or in the Customize UI option, adjust the appearance to how we would like it to be. Here in the window, we have two tabs. The first tab, Customize, we're going to create in this tab as we expand our workspace here, because right now we're on iCAD. We're going to be able to change menus and toolbars, ribbons, all these elements that we need for drawing. And maybe let's start with the menu. Although, of course, with the ribbon layout, this menu is not there. This menu was, which started with a file menu and then further options listed, was usually in the program when there were just toolbars. However, here we have this menu, and I'll draw your attention to it because the moment we select anything and click the right mouse button, we have this context menu. This context menu is actually in the same window, just under this drop-down menu. And here it will be as a context menu. So if we want to change anything there, we can also add or delete it here. Here you see all the options that can be found in the context menu. Let's check, maybe before we add something there, what we have under the right button. And we can customize our options, remove those things we don't use, and leave those things that we do use. Or add something that is, for example, not there. I see here that there is no offset option. So that is this modification option here. We will add this one for ourselves and go to the Customize window. I mentioned earlier that this is where we will define what our newest interface will look like on this first Customize tab. But on the second Transfer tab, we can also do it in this similar way. But here on the right, we also have the option to open the CUI file. These settings of ours, which we will now be doing, for example, creating toolbars, creating ribbons, defining keyboard shortcuts and aliases, which we will also be going to use, are saved in the CUI file. The CUI file from earlier will have to be opened here via the Open. We select it from the folder and then the things we need. We will expand and drag while holding the left mouse button down on the relevant options. If we have, for example, a ribbon of our own, we expand the ribbons, and this ribbon that we have here, just holding the left mouse button down, we move to the left side of the tree. Later on, we will overwrite and save, and use the save icon over our CUI file. We do this when we have a different version. That is, we now have a newer version, so we will transfer our settings from the older version. If we have the same version, we can simply overwrite the CUI file, and I'll show this later on. On the other hand, if it is an older version, we have to do it specifically through this window, through the Transfer tab. Please keep this in mind. And something else, if we have to move, for example, our own aliases or shortcuts, and there are several or a dozen of them, then of course we can, as long as they are all in one under each other, by holding the Shift key, select them all at once. But then we hold the Shift key until we move these items, from the moment of selection by dragging to the left side and letting go all at once in the designated place. If we don't do that, and after selection we let go of the Shift key, then only one element, such as one alias, will move. Not all of them, because the selection will deselect itself the moment you let go of the Shift key. Therefore, please remember, when moving more than one item, to hold the Shift key until you move to the left side of the tree and copy the settings you want. The second tab is for us to transfer settings from another computer through various files of the corresponding elements, for example, from menus and from shortcuts, from aliases, and also not only from INTERsoft-INTELLICAD or ArCADIA, but from other programs on which we previously worked. Here, we can transfer these settings for ourselves, either from another version of INTERsoft-INTELLICAD or from another program. On the other hand, if we want to customize this interface on our own, well, we will first use the first tab, and what is very important every time before we leave this window, before we click on OK, this Apply button will be made available. If we don't do this, then unfortunately what we changed won't show up. So we go back to the context menu. We expand. Now we're looking for where we want to add this option here. Let's say it's going to be somewhere under the rotate. And here at the bottom, we're looking for this option that we want to introduce into the context menu. I'm going to type it here, so we don't have to search for it. Of course, you can scroll through the list and find it that way. And I think it's just faster this way. And I move by holding the left mouse button down under, say, Rotate. And now, let's check if it has been moved. There is Offset. We click, as I mentioned earlier, Apply, and OK. Let's close the window for a moment and check if we succeeded in adding it. There's the Offset, above Rotate. So this way, we can add our own options to the context menu, which will be shown when we click the right mouse button. Here we still have the ability to create toolbars. I have toolbars disabled, but you can have them enabled even with the ribbon view. So if someone has the need, instead of palettes, for example, they can have some toolbars, and you can only have toolbars. How do we create a new one? We click Insert Toolbar. We name it in some way. Of course, it would be best to name it if we have several of these toolbars somehow, so that it's clear what is on this toolbar. If it's elements for drawing, then we type elements for drawing. If it's elements for editing, then again, an appropriate name, because if we have several of these bars, then later on we'll turn them on and off. We should know what we're turning on and off. Well, and now, similarly to the context menu, we're looking for the options we will want to introduce. Let's say we take line. I take a line like this. As the plus shows up, I hold on to the left mouse button and hover over this bar. The option will add itself to the toolbar, and that's how I can zoom in. As I click Apply, then please note that immediately this bar here is introduced, and these options are available. I can, of course, change the order of options depending on what is needed. I can also add such a drop-down icon in such a bar. It will all depend on how I want these items to be shown. So it is possible to do. As for ribbons, the matter is similar. We also click Insert New Tab, that is, New Ribbon. Let's say it's going to be called Drawing. We're going to go into it again now, and the text that's going to show up here on this ribbon, it will be shown up here in this first position after we add some more options, something like line. And Also, let's call it drawing. And now in this ribbon, we need to insert child panel. The child panel is sort of like a logical group. I'll tell you what this is all about. I'm just going to switch here to, for example, the home menu or on the home ribbon. Please note that that these options are here for drawing, here for modifying, here for layers. That is, these are such logical groups combining some specific options. And in this way, it would also be good to sort out your own options, because if you throw everything onto one ribbon like that, so without order or composition, then later on you'll have trouble finding the correct options. So please remember to arrange it in some way. Now, under the right button, I can choose to insert child row, which means I will already have the ability to enter commands here. Well, and now again, let's say it will be the line. It will be the same way as with the context menu. As it was with the toolbars, I just move these options for myself on this panel of mine, on this row, or one next to the other, underneath the other, so that these elements go underneath each other. Well, and if already I've moved it, I still have the option to select it on the right side. I can tell if it is going to be a big icon with text or without text. On this principle, as you can see here, that the icon with text, or for example, sometimes we have icons without text, just like here on the right side, as far as the clipboard group is concerned, where the icons are shown, but here copy paste is so popular that we no longer have a description here. So we can enter into the program in both ways. We know that if we have small icons with text and we have a lot of options, then these options, if they do not fit, will cut off our captions. But, of course, the moment we stop or on a given option, the dashboard will show such a balloon with a description, and it will be clear what the option is. On the other hand, if we do not put this text here at all, well, of course, this preview option on the desktop in this direction will also show up. On the other hand, regardless of the amount of space here on the ribbon, we will still have only this icon here, without any text. So here we define how it will look like. I'm already clicking apply. Well, we've already turned on the ribbon. We can see in real time what it looks like and whether we introduced everything correctly. And now we can create more of these panels. We go into the Customize window again. But I see that our ribbon does not have a name on the panel. That is this logical group. Please see that there's no caption at the bottom. Here I have to add it. Now we will apply, and you can already see the panel name. I need this caption because I would like to show one more option. To start with, I click on our panel, and from the menu I choose Insert Child Panel Breaker. The panel has been split, and I can add another panel. It will not be such a logical group next to the one we already have. This you already know how to introduce. This panel will be expandable, hidden under the caption. You can introduce any here. It's just about the principle, not creating a specific tool. Of course, I suggest that on your ribbon you think about what options you will put where. I confirm, that is, I click apply. Please note that there is an arrow next to the caption, and under it, added options. Sometimes in this case, that there are some options that we use less often, we'll want to have them anyway, but not on the main ribbon. Since we have too many of these options here, and we use them too infrequently, so we can hide them here just under this panel. They can be displayed with or without text, depending on whether text is needed. For example, here, under the Draw panel, we have such a hidden panel under Layers. Not all groups have such options, but those that the program itself imposes on us here also have such a division. But of course, they don't have to have it. We still have the option to add a drop-down button. Here we click on Row, right button, and select Insert Child Menu Button or Separator, which is a vertical line separating icons. We can customize the layout of our options to make them as optimal for us as possible so that we can quickly find the option we need. Now let's have another look at the Home ribbon. Here's the separator. Here are the drop-down icons, whether large or small. This is also up to us. We can define this whole layout in the Customize ribbon window. Basically, we can make all of our ribbons that are here of the options that we use on one ribbon. Then we don't have to switch. We have everything in one place. These are the possibilities that the program gives us. That said, let's move on. The Quick Access toolbar. That's here at the top right of the screen near the program icon. The Quick Access toolbar has a few more icons that you can enable for yourself by default. You can also add an option that you use frequently and don't want to constantly search for on the ribbons. We can add it in the same way we did before. We expand the Quick Access toolbar, and from the bottom list, we pull out the options we need by arranging them in the order that suits us. Here you see such slightly different entries. These are fields with selection lists, like layers, dimensioning styles. We can also add such items, lists, to ribbons. I forgot to show you this, so let's go back to our ribbon for a moment. Click on the panel again and choose Insert Child Control. And here we have, for example, text styles and dimensioning styles. You can use these controls on your own ribbon, Quick Access toolbar, or toolbars. Now I will show defining keyboard shortcuts and aliases. These are two similar options for triggering commands. Keyboard shortcuts are those shortcuts that you most often already know from other programs, such as Ctrl-C to copy, Ctrl-V to paste, Ctrl-Z undo, Ctrl-A select all. That is, these are function keys, that is Shift and Ctrl-Alt. And those buttons on the keyboard from F1 to F12, the combination, of course, between them and letters or numbers. We can save those combinations just in the keyboard shortcuts. We also have aliases. Aliases are like command shortcuts. For example, I will close the window to start drawing lines. Of course, I can select it from the toolbar or from the ribbon, but I can also just type the letter L. Please note the program already tells me, after typing the letter L, that there is a line in the parentheses. This is an alias from line, but as we can see, if I would type LA, there is now a layer explorer. So this is already another alias from another command. If I would have typed further, of course, the whole word can also be used to trigger the command. But it's easier to introduce one letter or two just to trigger the command, rather than typing the whole word. Please do not expect that under the letter R there will be, for example, a rectangle, because someone would say that I would like redraw, and I would like a regen, and I would like something else. The aliases are defined under the English command so that the lines are okay. However, the other aliases are already likely to mean something different than what you might expect. Therefore, it would be a good idea, as far as aliases are concerned, to simply look for yourselves to see what is under a given letter. If something doesn't suit, we can change it, of course. This is how I will define a keyboard shortcut for myself. Here, among all the keyboard shortcuts, we can always check if any one suits us. If not, then we can delete it and introduce it as our own shortcut. I'll take F5 for myself. I don't usually use this option, and if I do, I just click on the icon. Under the F5 key, I'll want to use another option, Regenerate, refresh. Therefore, I will now remove this F5. I will add a new keyboard shortcut, which is the right mouse button and Insert Accelerator. Press F5 and OK. So now I have to assign an option to it. And I would like to assign Regen All option. I copy the command, click on my alias, and paste the name of the regen command. In addition, I can still insert a description. This is an option that comes in handy very often. Automatic refresh, but when you turn it on, the program will slow down a bit, so I do not recommend it. it is better to refresh it yourself. I will show you such an option which shows at what point of the program already warns us that, that you definitely need to do this refresh. But sometimes it comes in handy just to redraw something to check if everything is in place. So I will set it up for myself under the F5, and later I will show you how it will work. And now we're going to do a similar thing with alias. So here we have letter L. But we already know that this is the letter that stands for line. But let's say under P, what we have under P, we have pan. I use the mouse wheel to move, so I would prefer it to be something else, such as polylines. I will search for the commands and copy them again. If you remember, of course you can just type it in right away. Without the CC, just polyline underscore and under P. I'll refresh the name of the command. Basically, you don't need to delete the alias and enter it again. You might as well modify it and apply and OK. Now let's check under L. We have lines, which means we draw ourselves lines. OK. And under P, there's a polyline. I can choose, and it's definitely a polyline. You can see from the selection that we have line, and here we have polyline. This way you can customize keyboard shortcuts and aliases and all these elements that are precisely in the program. Finally, I always suggest that you turn off the program. When you shut down the program, settings are saved. I won't save all changes to the files I'll have here, but we turn off the program so that it saves the changed settings for us. The settings are saved in the user's directories. I'll tell you in a moment where this is located and show you how to sort of automatically save it so you don't have to do it manually. We start the program. I will open a file on which I will show you this option with a redrawing of the drawing. Please note, I have a part of the project here. I think it's sewage, not telecommunications, embedded in a large piece of land. Now, please note that as I zoom to the bottom right corner of the program, it is already showing me that I should redraw it. There we go. It happens very often that we open a drawing just with a map, zoom in on a part of it, and suddenly, horror, what happened? The project has messed up for us. Something is happening? No, it's just that the drawing has not been refreshed. We can click here at the bottom of Regen and choose this option from the View ribbon under Redraw. But I have a keyboard shortcut defined, and I won't hesitate to use it right now. I press F5 and the program redraws my view. So, if you see any strange marks on the document, you can then regenerate the view. I will do it via the F5, but you can just click on the pop-up message or otherwise bring up the regen option. The regen option is very useful, so please remember where this option is located. Tool palettes. As I mentioned earlier, there's an option to define options on palettes and place them on the side of the screen. An option especially useful if you have a widescreen monitor. It makes no sense for us to have ribbons with nothing on half of them, meaning almost everyone is half empty. Then it is better to define under these palettes those of our tools that are used. And there's a very simple way to do it. We click on the palette with the right mouse button. We say Customize Palettes. After right-clicking, we select New Palette. We name it appropriately, so let's call it New, so it's clear. Of course, what's on this palette, then we close it. And now we select this palette. Right-click on it and choose Customize Commands. And again, a window opens. We search for the command and drag the options, holding the left mouse button down. We select the commands to be on the palette one by one. If necessary, of course, we can move one after the other. We have the option to insert a separator here in between. Move some options up, move it down, it's up to us now. And in this way we can define these palettes. Here we still have option to customize palettes. we have the option to export and import palettes. I suggest that after selecting a palette, we can export each palette separately, so that if we need to save it somewhere, we can have our own palettes available, in case we need, for example, to use the option to reset settings. Sometimes this does happen. As for customizing the interface, I think that's pretty much everything. Meanwhile, we can still customize the documents. Please note that when we open a new document, that is, if it's without a start page, we open the program. The program opens with some file. It is empty, and it's supposed to be like that. On the other hand, it already has some settings. It already has text settings. For example, one-line text. We start, and it has a text height setting of 2/10. So we have to enter the right height for ourselves, otherwise we won't see the text. The file already has a dimension setting, which is also about the same size. That is probably 0.18 or 1800s or 18,000s. When it comes to the size of the text, so if it suits us, then okay. But if we would like to customize it to our own needs, it would be better to make such a template of our own. I'll open a file we worked on before. I have it here in my recently used files. Because the way it looks is that in order to create a custom template, we need to have some file from which we're going to move and rearrange the options. And now we're going to go into the Layer Explorer. But we're going to switch it here to this INTERsoft-INTELLICAD Explorer, the Program Explorer, so that we don't have to wander around the ribbons and turn them on in different places. In case we do, probably on the ribbon. Tools, yes. On the right side, we have all the sub-options that are in this one window, simply with icons we selected. So we select local layouts, layers separately, but it is exactly the same window. If we switch to this state, then we have everything available here, and we won't have to look for anything anymore and worry where the settings are. Okay, the drawing we must have, that is a blank drawing. That is, we open a new one. Whether it will be with a grid or without, it will depend on us. I will turn it off, because on the white background, the grid bothers me. We can add layers for ourselves. Remember that the drawing is to be blank. Only the settings are defined. That is, no lines, no blocks, no text. We don't do anything like that. It is just supposed to be an empty document. Blank, and we can start drawing anywhere, and nothing will go wrong for us here later when we work on it. That is a blank drawing on which, if we're talking about, for example, dimensioning, the dimensioning I'll take now from the project on which we've already dimensioned the drawing. These dimensions I'll just select for myself, copy them, and into my new drawing, I'll simply transfer them with paste. And I have the dimension. If I had, but I don't think I have any textiles, it's the same. That's how I copy and insert textiles into the drawing. Paste. I can, as I mentioned before, define layers for myself, instantly giving them the color of the thickness of the line, the types of those lines, and then I don't have to define it every time anymore. So let's say we will do dimensioning. And descriptions. And the rest I will define for myself at the appropriate time. Here I will make myself a navy blue, and also, of course, thicknesses. Whether a layer is printed or is to be printed, it will be up to you. That is, all these settings I can copy from other drawings or just define them now. But after defining, for example, dimensioning, it will be difficult. It is better to copy from a drawing that will be of similar content. Because if we take the dimensioning from the project where we did the landscaping and we take it later to draw, let's say steel, well, it won't suit us very well. Please remember that these templates should be matched to the appropriate element, scales, and units. We can create several of these templates for ourselves. I'll show an example here so that this template opens, but we can prepare templates for ourselves and just open them and not the specific ones. Now I draw something from urban planning. Then I open such a template, something from another subject. This is also how you can work and much fewer elements that I have to enter. Blocks can also be entered into such a document. On the other hand, I'm against this for the reason that they take up space and such unused ones can slow down our drawing in a given project. And besides, when it comes to solving the problem, possibly with blocks, where to keep them, I will show you at the end a cool option to create your own library which does not burden any document. It is simply in the program, and from there, so to speak, it comes. Alright, now we have the project of ours, we're in it, and now it's a clean document. We don't have anything in it. We only have the settings that are right here. So what do? We click on the program icon, then Save As. We choose a file type here. It won't be DWG, it'll be a drawing template file. So here, DWT, we save it in such a place where we will not delete or change it. I'll save it in INTERsoft-INTELLICAD 2023 documents, and here it is. Let's say I'll call this template centimeters. I have saved it under this name. When opening new documents, I can choose the option New from Template and select the appropriate one if I have a few of them there, or change the default one. I can do it in such a way that I click at the bottom of the bar in the command area with the right mouse button and enter the program settings. Here we have the file paths, and here we have the template, which is in the program. And now, first of all, we find where the templates are. That is template paths. Here we have the path to the template. This is a location of these templates in the user's directory. We can click Browse here. We'll go into this location, but we can also point to our location, which is Documents, INTERsoft-INTELLICAD. And this is the directory from which it should now be taken. And now the template. I click here on Template, Browse, and it shows that this is my document that I've just saved. So open, OK. And now I create a new document, a clean and blank one. It looks exactly the same as the one when I was starting to draw, but now I'm going to take it. I'm going to introduce dimensioning. Then we'll go to the description ribbon, dimensions. We have the style, we select it, we enter it, and the value is visible. Now, let's still check the layers that I added and the texts. They're also in the program. Therefore, please remember, if you create drawings in a certain way, as if on a single template, then define it and do not set all the parameters each time. Before you actually save this template, you might still be tempted to make some adjustments to the system variables. I've already partially mentioned this before, as I was changing the selection method. The default is that to select something with the area you have to hold down the left mouse button. It doesn't matter whether from left or right, but you always have to keep the left mouse button pressed. I already have it set up so that I click and I don't have to hold the button down because I select with 2 clicks, which helps especially if the drawing, while selecting, we still have to zoom in, zoom out, or move the drawing. Then the held key usually gets in the way. And that's changing the value of the system variable. We have system variables on the Tools ribbon. Here we have the whole system variable manager. Here you can go in and see what they are, what they're used for. It would be best if you go to the Help ribbon, the Help icon. The last section is just the system variables. They're all described here. What is a variable, what it's used for, whether it's an integer, whether there's another way to change this value, whether it's stored in the registry or in the document. You have it all described here for each variable, so I suggest you familiarize yourselves with it. Now, let's get back to this variable manager. I'm just going to show you a few of these variables that you might find useful. And the first one is just going to be very good in terms of setting the scale of the line type. At the moment when we draw lines, the default is scale 1. The system variable CELTSCALE is responsible for this. As you can see, it is precisely 1. This value is saved in the drawing, so if we change it in one drawing, for example, in the template, then later on with each project we'll still have the same. The default is that there is the scale 1, and when we enter a dashed line, it looks like a continuous line. If you have to change that line scale every time, then it's a good idea just to change the value here before you even save the drawing template there. Let's change this value, if we already know it. Let's remember that this template is blank, so that no drawing element, no line, no polyline is there. Then let's define another value. We can do this either by double-clicking on the variable in question, and here we type the new value, or right-click on the value and edit value. This is up to you either way. As you can see, here it is written in the drawing. It can also be stored in the register. And there is such a variable, lay lock fade CTL. Please note that this is a value from -90 to 90. The default is 50. The moment we lock the layer, it grays out. Maybe not so much grays out, but it gets the color we used to draw darker or lighter, more like a little bit hazy. And this system variable is stored in the registry. That is, it will not go with our file to another computer. It is only on the given computer where it can be changed. If we do not want this inactive layer to be displayed, we can change this value from 50, for example, to 90 or 1. Whatever we want, so that this view or drawing is intuitive for us and not for the program. Such a variable as fill mode is a variable stored in the drawing, just like the first one I mentioned. As for the scale of the line type, this variable is responsible for whether the hatching in the document is shown or not. If it is disabled, then even if we have the area of the scope hidden, it does not show this hatching, and all subsequent hatching or gradients we try to insert are invisible. Only after enabling this variable, i.e. after setting its value to 1, only then will it be able to show this hatching on the drawing. So we can change these variables here. Of course, if we know the value of a variable, we can also do this in the command area, as I have already shown in the previous presentation. There is also the pick first variable. It is responsible for selecting elements. By default, it is like this. We select lines, click delete, and the element is deleted. But if we disable this variable, set it to 0, this is when we select lines, click delete, and the program needs confirmation from us that this element is indeed to be deleted. So we must then confirm via enter. Sometimes it happens that users ask what happened because they can't delete a line. By accident, this variable has been changed, and it is because of this that they cannot delete. You can then restore the default settings, but if we still have some other settings of our own, it might be better to go to this manager and modify it for ourselves, what we would like to turn back on the appropriate setting back on. And here, as you can see, we have the possibility to save these or modified variables and read them at any time, for example, after we restart the settings. But you can also do it in a slightly different way, namely, just as we have the System Variables Manager, so on the Express Tools ribbon here under the name of the Tools panel. Unfortunately, a little bit hidden. We have the Import and Export System Variables. We can export them, save them in some place so that we don't accidentally delete them, and in case we had to restore the default settings, or for example, we change the computer, we import these variables for ourselves. But please remember that this should rather be done in the same version of the program. So if we have INTERsoft-INTELLICAD 2023, it's okay. But if there's a new version, I would be careful with the import of variables, because it may be that the variables have changed their settings a little, and it will not be quite the same way that we want it to be. There's another option to save both the variables and those of our settings I mentioned earlier, such as the custom keyboard shortcuts, custom ribbons, or the entire interface layout. Only for this, you will need to close the program. Now we need to find where the program is installed. The easiest way to do this is to find the shortcut on the desktop, right-click Open Location, and here look for a file called ICAD Configuration Manager. The program must be closed, otherwise we get a message that it needs to be closed. So even if I just want to show it to you, I had to do it. After all, remember that it is when the program is shut down that changes to the settings are saved. After launching, we choose what we want to copy, what we want to save for ourselves. By default, the registry is selected. That is, all those variables that save in the registry that we defined for ourselves will be saved. But if we also want the application data folder field, then I suggest that we just save, because those are our settings. What we have defined as our own ribbons, our own keyboard shortcuts, aliases, is sitting right in this section. Also, please copy this for yourself. If we want folders of sample documents, we can of course also do this. Here, we can also indicate other documents which we would like to keep as some kind of backup. And if we have some additional programs attached in Lisp or in some other way, which run with the program, we can also select this, but we still have to indicate these programs when using this option again. But just in case, it is really in this application. They will be saved in the program that they are there. However, we still have to confirm that we want to sort of automatically run them with a program. And now we have to do a very important thing, namely to mark the right side that we only want a backup and we don't want to delete. And if we don't mark this option on the right side, this backup will automatically saved, but it will delete all our variables from the registry and all our settings that we have made. Not a good thing. We will have it all in a file that will be created by itself as an archive, and we can copy it. Okay, but why do we want to do that only when we leave, just in case we need to restart something or move to another computer? Now, we don't want to delete the data that the program uses. So remember, this option, backup only, so do not delete files, needs to be checked. And now we click on Start, and the file will be saved. If anyone would like to know where it will save, then of course, in this box here was information that it saves in the documents of the user as we log on. And we can either go through the Open folder, or just from Windows Explorer and Computer Documents, and there will be a folder that is created automatically when saving the settings INTERsoft-INTELLICAD 2023 backup. We can, when creating the archive, change this path and enter it anywhere. And now, looking at today's date, this is the file. We can keep it as it was saved, and if necessary, to restore our settings, we need to extract it. I do not have any program to extract the zip file for me here, so Windows will have to extract all the files for me in the location where it is. That is, I will just create a directory for itself. This will automatically open for me. Please note, it has now created a directory here with the same date. And what do we have here? The registry, that is the reg file, which when you click, I'm not going to click this now, I will show this on some screenshots. It will show you this message, or rather ask if we are sure we want to run this file. So yes, of course, we would click yes. Then the question will show if we definitely want to enter these reg files into the registry. We would say yes, of course, we want to do that too. Well, and then the information that these keys have been changed and added. And here we'll also have to then click OK. In the second directory, we have our data. What I mentioned earlier, I will just open here. I'll show you where it is located in a moment. Here is the CUI file, which is where we saved the settings of our ribbons, bars, aliases, keyboard shortcuts, and so forth. And these two files are responsible for palettes, amongst other things. So in general, when we copy everything to our directory, and now, where is this directory located? And now how to find this directory into which the program enters our settings. We need to copy those files exactly to the same place. The easiest way is again through the Windows Explorer and Computer. And now if we know where the app data directory is located in our user, then of course we can go into the user folders here and manually show the directory if we do not know where it is. And besides, by default, we have it so that there are default settings in Windows that do not show some directories. It is best to do it like this. We select this PC. Here we type percentage app data percentage, press enter, and the program automatically enters us into our user, to which we log in. Here in this roaming directory, we click on ArCADiasoft, then we search for INTERsoft-INTELLICAD 2023. We open this directory, and then what we extracted from the zip file, we move into these settings. Then it may be that here, these files won't be here at all, so we won't overwrite them, but simply add them. On the other hand, of course, we will have to overwrite the default.cui file. So when it shows whether to overwrite it, of course, please do so. So in this way, we copy from this directory where Windows unzipped it for us to our users directory, replacing here all the files that were there and adding those that weren't. Because the program hasn't created them yet due to the fact that we haven't defined our own settings. This, of course, is here where we copy, simply dragging these items. Just don't move, but preferably right-click and then the list will show up. We copy to have this back up here. We will have it in the zip file. Just remember that this zip file has to be unzipped, otherwise neither we will get access here to this reg file. That is, we will not save the changes in the registry. And remember one more thing. We always make copies of the settings with the program turned off, and only for the same version of the program. If we have a different version, a newer one, we open the program, and in the Customize window, we drag the appropriate settings from the CUI file we loaded. To reiterate, right-click beyond the icons and select Customize. On the Move tab, open the saved CUI file, for example from the previous version, and move the individual elements to the left side. Now I would still like to show you such an option which comes in very handy. I'll just open a sample project. We go to the View ribbon. We go to turn on Properties, because if it will be handy for us. Often users ask for such options as we can find something in the document. We have right here in the Properties window, on the right side, Quick Selection. We can also find this if, for example, we want to search for the same blocks that we inserted. We can select such a block and under the right button, also select Quick Selection. This is an option for blocks, for text, to search for all polylines, lines, all or only some. We can do this way that polylines can be found, for example, by the type of dashed line, or even by a continuous line, or by its thickness or its color. If we're talking about text, then by what is written in the text, that is, by the content. If, for example, we are talking about a block, we can show the same color, the same scale, or, for example, with the same name. I specifically opened the Properties window on the left side to find the name of my block here at the bottom. And I have to select it because when selected, by default in the Quick Selection window, the first from the list is shown. We find the name, Oh, I just still have to change the usage for the items located. And it will probably deselect my selection. I'll want to apply this to the whole drawing, but I can on a particular layer or part, so I can define it as needed. Once again, I find the file and I click OK. The program shows me at the bottom of the screen here in the command area 9 of the same elements were found, and it immediately tells me where they are. So this way we can find all the blocks in the document, or find some specific text, or find some texts that are the same, if there are any. So this way we can use this quick selection option, finding them, and later we can modify, delete, or just check the amount of these elements. We can also, without first selecting elements in the drawing, search, for example, for some lines on a particular layer, or drawn with some particular type of pen, and, for example, modify them. The option is very useful, and it's good to know where it is. And that's why I'll remind you that either under the right mouse button or simply in the list. That is, in the context menu that will be talked about at the beginning. The option will be available here if, of course, we have not changed this context menu. If you select an item and click the right mouse button, you'll also find the option in the context menu. Another way to invoke this quick selection is through the icon in the Properties window here on the right. And we use this option to quickly find elements in a drawing for their modification, deletion, or counting, for example. Sometimes it happens that while working, something in our project starts to slow down and works a little strangely. What can we do then? First, save it, close the program, and open it again, but with the recover option. The recover option and purge, which is cleaning and deleting duplicates, were discussed, I think, in the 4th presentation, so I suggest going back to that presentation if you need to. The recover option helps to clean up and fix the document if we found some errors there. We can use the audit option without closing the document, but nevertheless the recover option is a little more vigilant, so to speak. That's why I recommend shutting down the project and opening it with this recover option. Cleaning the document or purge option will remove for us unused elements from the drawing, such as empty layers. Removing duplicates, if we have several lines overlapping in dozens or hundreds of places, this of course also makes a difference to the file size for the speed of the file. So the remove duplicates option with properly adjusted tolerance options is very, very useful, and I suggest using it too. Sometimes it is helpful, for example, to turn off hatching if we don't need it at that time. This variable, by setting it to 0, will also speed up the work on the drawing. Also, when it comes to text, 2 variables that help speed up work are to disable font fill, which means it will only be an outline of the letter and not fill in the middle, which is important when there are lots of text in it, or, as a last resort, to disable text, which means switching to displaying only a frame, so you know where the texts are. It can be restored at any time, so that is clear what is written. On the other hand, if you don't happen to be working with text, you can safely turn them off, and there will only be rectangles. And the regen mode global system variable, which allows you to disable the global refresh of the drawing, just so that the program does not slow down too much on large drawings. Also, this option I suggest you turn on and off if something within the document starts to go jerky, so to speak. Now I would still like to discuss the coordinate system settings. We have a global coordinate system, which I think we talked about in the 2nd presentation when we discussed drawing, but as with this drawing, it would be useful that when I draw some elements, I would like them to be in relation to, for example, a street or some element on the document. And now, when I draw with the ortho option turned on, the lines will be horizontal or vertical relative to the screen. It will be the same on the left side. And here I would like them to be angled a little bit. It will be easier for me if I switch the global coordinate system to the local coordinate system. On the view ribbon, we have the local coordinate systems shown and switch to the global system, which is the one we have now. The definition, on the other hand, in another place, we will switch in a moment. I suggest that you set up such a local coordinate system for yourself. For this, I switch to the Home ribbon and again to Explore, Layers, and go to the coordinate system in the drawing, which is open, and here add your own layout by 3 points. Now the program asks me for the new origin of the coordinate system. I will define it according to this building that is here. The beginning of the coordinate system will be here. Now the point on positive x-axis. So this will be here, and my x-axis, and here the positive y-axis. And now I can name the system and say that it is valid for the drawing. I confirm and exit the option. Still, the drawing looks the same, but now I type the command _plan, I confirm, and the program asks whether to switch to the world or to the UCS system. So the default is the current UCS, which is my default local layout. I confirm via enter, and pay attention now. Of course, now I can use my own F5 shortcut to refresh the drawing. Now the lines with the ortho option still draw horizontally, vertically, relative to the screen, but also relative to this part of the drawing are my reference. When I want to switch to the global coordinate system, the world, of course, again, the _plan command, and I can switch to this other view. This also allows me to enter local coordinate systems on our sheet. For example, one sheet is the world global coordinate system, another is the local one. In another one, I will define, for example, here the local layout. I can switch between them, and the printouts will be just these set views. For example, here in the sheet, and you can see our local coordinate system, we will switch to model and turn on the global coordinate system. Excuse me. And please note, in the model, I have the appearance of the drawing as when I open the file. And here in the sheet, because I enabled it while still having the local layout, I have just mirrored it. In each sheet, I can have different local coordinate systems introduced so that the printouts will be clearer. I can move between global and local coordinate systems in the Explorer Coordinate Systems window. So now, I will still show you how to create your own library of blocks. This can be done by introducing them to the palette. That is, on the tool palette. I right-click Customize Palettes. I create my own palette, which will be called, for example, Blocks. Of course, it can be called differently, but for me, it will be intuitive. And now I select such a block, which is in a given document, and move it to the palette. I find another one, select it, and keeping the mouse button pressed, the left mouse button pressed, move it to the palette. When I turn off the program and turn it on again, this palette will be available here. Just remember that these blocks have a reference to the files from which they were downloaded. This means that these documents must not be moved, renamed, moved to another directory, or deleted, because the program, if it does not find the documents, will simply remove it from the list for us. It will not have a reference to the item, so it will not display it. Also, if we take a block from a document, we just leave the document and the block in the same place. But we no longer need to remember in which file it is. The program will remember it for us. And we can just enter these blocks in a new document. In conclusion, I would still like to remind you of a rather important thing, namely the settings in the options window. I already talked at the first presentation about autosave and that this should not be turned off. But I didn't mention that the default setting is that when the program is closed, the autosave file from the app data directory are deleted. Switch to keep autosave files, or as a last resort, if you do not want to have these documents when you move them to the recycle bin. The recycle bin is also very rarely deleted by some people, so in case of emergency, you will have the safety copies there. But I suggest that you have these backup copies there in the local settings. We don't do anything there, we don't save anything, so the fact that they are there won't bother us, and thanks to this we'll be able to return to them if necessary. Please remember to set it up here. And just as a reminder, on the Paths Files tab, we just have access to this directory with these settings, where autosave files are saved. We also have all the other paths that we might need, for example, for hatch patterns. Please note that saving behavior patterns or fonts in text does not save in the document, and only the information about what was taken from the program or the system. If we do not have a font installed on our computer and it was in a document, it will be replaced with another one. If we want to have the same one, then the program will tell us at the very beginning when opening here in the command area that some font has been swapped. Then simply install this font and open the file again. And this font will be there. If the font is a font that is not like a true type installed in the system, but a .shx, then we will also find here in the base paths information where the program keeps the fonts. Here's a directory, and to this directory we simply copy those fonts from other programs, these .shx fonts. The same will be in the case of hatching. If a particular hatching does not exist in the INTERsoft-INTELLICAD program, it can be transferred from another program, and we also need to check where the directories and files are located, into which we will introduce the new hatching. Also here on this tab, Paths and Files, we find quite a lot of information, which in case of anything will help us to open documents properly. If we give ourselves some more elements, which other users have defined in other documents, in other programs. I think we have exhausted such basic and somewhat advanced options of INTERsoft-INTELLICAD. It is possible to talk about this program for a very long time. I'm sure that we haven't shown many more advanced options, but I'll leave that for another time. To use the program in a fast and I think comfortable way, these 6 presentations we've done are quite enough. Also, thank you for watching all of them. If anyone has not yet watched, I will yet again encourage you to do so and to familiarize yourselves with this material. So thank you very much, and I wish you pleasant, intuitive, and happy work with our program. So until the next time, see ya!